All right, guys, let's talk about vocal booths. Booths. I can't say it right. So I'm currently in the market for a vocal booth. So I want to use it for voiceover stuff, for, some music stuff. So singing, guitar playing, just simple, basic things that right now I have to take someone to a commercial studio, if they're a client, to record. But if I had something that was a bit more professional looking, like an actual vocal booth, then I could potentially have people come here to my home studio to record for a more affordable cost. So that's kind of the idea behind why I want a vocal booth right now, because what I'm using right now is actually not very professional looking. It works pretty well, but it doesn't look professional at all. It's very janky looking. It's actually a temporary booth that I set up when I'm going to record. So I think I actually have a video on that topic. So I will link to that in the cards up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about for what I'm currently using. So I'm just looking for something that looks a little more professional, works a little bit better, and that's basically it. And there are actually a whole bunch of options if you're in the market to get something like this, like some kind of a vocal booth. So I will put on the screen a bunch of other options that I also looked at when I was going through this process. But basically what I've done here is I've narrowed it down to these two options, so Whisper Room and then Studio Bricks. So I'm going to talk about these two and how they compare in more detail, just for the sake of focusing on something for this video. But there are a bunch of other options that seem like they would be great choices as well. So right now in this process, I have not placed an order yet, but I have decided, I believe, what I want to order. And I have reached out to both of these companies and I've started emailing with them about quotes and stuff like that. So that is where I am in this process at this moment. And I've also poured over all the material they have on their websites as well, because it's a big decision. It's a lot of money to invest in something like this. So I have poured through these websites in a good amount of detail. So at first glance, Studio Bricks does look a little bit better. It looks a little trendier, I don't know, fancier to me, right? It's got this nice sleek design with it. When you look at the Whisper Rooms, let's see here. So this is basically what the Whisper Room looks like, right? It's a booth. It's got carpeting on all the surfaces. It usually comes in like the black or the gray, but there are other options you can get, I do believe. It might just be for the studio foam that you have different colors, though. I have to look into that again. I was just fine with the black and gray. So I didn't look into that in too much detail. But this is basically what they look like. The Studio Bricks ones look a little sleeker. They look like they have a bit of the Apple Store effect, right? It's very minimalistic looking, very sleek looking. You can actually get your logo printed on your booth, so that is pretty cool. So my initial reaction just from looking at the two is that the Studio Bricks booth looks a little trendier, it looks a little nicer. But how well they work and how good they sound is a lot more important than what they look like, right? So upon digging into the actual function of the booths a bit more, it does seem like Studio Bricks, in their favor, they do seem to have a better sound isolation as like a default for their booths. So they do seem to actually have better prevention of outside sound coming into the actual booth. They have a little bit better sound isolation. But you also have to consider that the Studio Bricks, their default is a dual wall system. So that's going to prevent more sound coming in a lot better than a single wall system, which is what the Whisper Room comes as default. But if you want, a second wall is an option in the Whisper Room. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're comparing the sound isolation, you have to compare the dual wall Whisper Room to the Studio Bricks, because that's what the Studio Bricks is. It's a dual wall system. So another thing that I liked about the Studio Bricks, let's see if I can find it here. I believe it was in here, is that they use environmentally friendly material. So I think that's really cool. That's something that I like to try to focus on in my life. I have a whole bunch of things in my house that I have changed to make them more environmentally friendly. I've gone a little bit overboard with it in some areas of my life, but that's just something that I think is a huge bonus, is that they're using environmentally friendly materials. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, so I found where I found that information. So if you go music and recording, and then you scroll, it's right here, eco-friendly and long-lasting materials. I'm not sure, 100% sure what that means, but it's good to know. I think it's a plus. Another bonus for Studio Bricks is that I believe they said it takes about 7 minutes to assemble or disassemble the unit. I actually watched a video of someone doing it within 7 minutes, and it's very simple. Each of these squares here is basically just a block, and you just stack them, and then you have a roof piece, and that's it. It's really simple looking, really easy to do, very fast to do. So the assembly time and the disassembly time is a lot faster than Whisper Room, which I believe it's not too bad. It's like an hour or two, I think, for Whisper Room. So that's a bonus if you're going to try to use it for convention halls or things like that, where you're going to be moving the booth a lot. But for my purposes, it's not a huge factor because I'm just going to be setting it up, and then I'm only going to be moving it if I actually move my home, right? So something to consider. And then another factor that I thought was a big advantage with Studio Bricks, even more so than how fast it can be assembled, was the fact that it's modular. So I believe the idea is that I've emailed them about this. I haven't received an answer yet, but I believe the idea is that if you want, you can get, the basic booth, and then later you can always expand it because they're basically like Lego bricks. So you can make it as big as you want later on. You can make it smaller later on if you want as well. It has that modular ability to change your space as your needs a change over time, right? So I thought that was a huge advantage. I'm not sure how much I'm going to actually need it, but it's something to consider for sure because I might want to make my booth a little bit bigger if I move into a bigger space later on. So those were the big takeaways that I thought were points in favor of Studio Bricks. And of course, depending on what you're using it for, if you're going to be bringing it to a conference, that assembly time is going to be a much bigger parameter. If you're just looking for isolation, then that's going to be a much bigger parameter. If you're intending to put it in an office, in a corporate setting, something like that, that's going to be a much bigger parameter. Whereas for me, I'm going to be doing some music stuff, some voiceover stuff. The interior sound might be a bit more of a focus. And I know that those two things sound like they should be the same thing, essentially, but they're not. They're just linked concepts, right? So we have how much isolation we have how the soundproofing is, so to speak, right? So how much does it actually keep sound from coming in to the booth or keep sound from going out of the booth? And then we have the actual acoustics within the booth. And I have to think about both, right? So like I said, I emailed both companies to get a quote for my space. I told them the size of the space. I told them the purpose that I'm using it for. I told them, my thoughts about what I wanted and asked for a quote. And so what happened was Whisper Room replied a lot faster and they seemed a little bit more professional to me. Studio Bricks, it took a while for me to get a response. And then I did manage to get a response from them. But then they sent me a quote for someone else. And then they asked me where I was located, even though that was one of the first sentences in the email I originally sent them was, "Hi, I'm in San Diego, California, USA." I haven't specified that because I know they're based in Spain, I believe. They're in Spain and New York, I believe, for Studio Bricks. So, in terms of customer service, I've definitely been more impressed with the Whisper Room service than Studio Bricks. And this kind of ties in with customer service too, but I liked how with Whisper Room, they're a bit more transparent about their pricing. So if you go to their sound booth models, they have the base price listed for the different models. It's very easy to get an idea of, ish ballpark where you're going to be. So I liked that. Whereas with Studio Bricks, I believe you have to actually message them to get a quote or get a, what's the word? Get a catalog. So I do like the transparency that you get with Whisper Room. And at least for the size booth that I'm looking at, it does appear that Whisper Room would be a little bit cheaper. So the size that I'm looking at here is, I believe it's this one, it's the 4260S. So it's not very big. So it does look like for a little bit less money, I would get a booth that's slightly bigger than what I would get with Studio Bricks, which I believe would be this basic one. Yeah. So it's a little bit smaller for a little bit more money. Again, it's double walled though. So there's that. So at this point, I've been emailing with Studio Bricks and Whisper Room. And I believe what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the Whisper Room. And I have selected all my add-ons and stuff. It's not going to be the base price because I do have some add-ons. But I believe I'm going to go with the Whisper Room. And one of the big reasons for that decision, in my head at least, is that the marketing for Whisper Room versus Studio Bricks. It seems like Whisper Room has more options that allow you to control and tailor your internal acoustics for the booth, whereas Studio Bricks seems a bit more geared towards like convention use, corporate use, voiceover use, stuff where it's more about just getting isolation and getting clean sound. So I do like that Whisper Room seems to be catering a bit more to the music people, if that makes sense. And I'm not sure, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this, let me know what you think in the comments below. But it does seem like Studio Bricks, when I look through their site, when I talk to them a little bit, they are a bit more focused on just the isolation. And Whisper Room has things like, for example, you can easily remove foam, you can get walls that are at angles so that you don't get, that effect from standing waves in the parallel walls. Whisper Room does have features. For example, their foam is, I believe it's basically Velcro that attaches it to the actual booth. So it's easily removed and adjusted and changed and catered to whatever your desire is. They also have features like you can get this add-on where the walls are at slight angles so that you're less likely to get, standing waves, stuff like that. They just seem to have more features where you can actually adjust and control the internal acoustics of your booth. And maybe most of the stuff I'm using it for, it won't really matter. I'll just want the dead sound, and it wouldn't really make a huge difference between Studio Bricks and Whisper Room. But like when you're looking at the foam, for example, Studio Bricks is hard mounted into their booths. I believe that's what it is. My understanding from looking at their website is that it's hard mounted within their booth. So you can't easily control it after the fact. You make your decision when you purchase it, and that's what you have. And that probably would be totally acceptable, totally fine. I think I would be totally happy with it, honestly. I just kind of like how Whisper Room seems to be catering a bit more to the music crowd. So there's that. And I also like how the base price is a little bit lower for Whisper Room. So even if my booth ends up being as expensive or more expensive than the Studio Bricks booth, at least I like the idea that I'm getting to choose and control what gets put into that to make it more expensive. So yeah, those are my basic thoughts about the Whisper Room versus Studio Bricks for a sound booth for my home studio. So I would love to hear what you guys think about these two options, what you think about other options as well. Please leave them in the comments below. And I hope someone finds this helpful. It's just me thinking about what to buy. I don't know if anyone finds that helpful, but let me know. And as always, if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I would appreciate all that stuff. And I do have that Patreon, so it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. And my patrons get access to additional content. We have a Discord that we're all hanging out on. We're doing a book club. It's tons of fun. And other than that, I come out with new videos every Wednesday, and thank you for watching. Okay.